it has been done. This is another San Francisco. This is Pilga. Then after restoration, you see how it has come. So thank you very much for giving me opportunity and listening to me. And any discussion further we can have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trivedi, for a very informative talk. Grateful to you. You have brought out all dimensions of the mangroves, the present condition, status, restoration, all aspects. Thank you so much. If you kindly agree, since we are past 12:15 now, nearing 12:20, we will have the other talk also since the other speaker has joined, and then have the discussions together.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
We request you kindly to stay with us. And esteemed audience, I would like to inform you that we are also being we have been joined by Dr. Ramakrishna, former director of the Zoological Survey of India. Welcome to you, sir. And then we move on to the next talk. We have been joined by Professor R. Nagendran. As I mentioned, there was some technical snag, so he's coming up with a set of slides presented from here, and he is in Chennai, so he would be speaking. His audio will be on. Professor R. Nagendran, former expert member of the National Green Tribunal, Government of India, former professor in environmental science and engineering, Anna University, Chennai, currently associated with a number of organizations as independent director of the SMSO Permanent Nidhi Limited, advisor to Eco India Private Limited, research strategy, civic fulcrum, adjunct faculty in the Asian College of Journalism, is also into consultancy with regard to environment and legal aspects. Over 40 years of experience in research, teaching, an academician par excellence into human capacity building. And as I mentioned, he has led a number of research projects globally also. At this time, he would be speaking on the topic, the science-law interface, a futuristic potential, a futuristic pointer for environmental management. The science-law interface, a futuristic pointer for environmental management. With these words, I would like to inform Professor Nagendran that we have a large number of audience interested in environment and the legal aspects that you are going to speak on. A great privilege on behalf of the Karnataka Science Technology Academy to welcome and request Professor R. Nagendran for his talk. Dr. Nagendran, please.
Hello.
Yes, please go on. Please go on.
Yeah, so you can hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I should have started with good morning, but then, I'll start with good afternoon to all of you. And before I start, first I would like to thank KSTA for giving me this opportunity, and especially Dr. Ayyappan. All of us know him, and I thank him a million times for putting up with me throughout this sorting of technical snag. Thank you, Dr. Ayyappan. And the title is Science Law Interface. We saw what science could do. It's preventing me to see you all, though on a virtual platform. When science functions fine, everything functions well. But if there is a snag, then it's very difficult to address the issue. Anyway, at least you can hear me now. And in a lecture, hearing is more important than seeing. And I just wish to recall years ago when the government of Karnataka celebrated World Environment Day. That was by the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board, that organization. I had the privilege and honor to deliver the Environment Day address. The then chairperson of the board, Mr. Ramurthy IAS, was kind enough to give me an opportunity there. And now it's Dr. Ayyappan who has given me an opportunity. So I thank the government of Karnataka as well for remembering an original citizen of Karnataka to call him and give an opportunity. Now, in the next 45 or so minutes, I would like to capture some important facets of the title, namely environmental management. The nucleus of the presentation is environmental management, and then I'm going to see it with the lens of law and science, the other aspects of science. Uh, so, in this presentation, I propose to address the issues listed, the differences between sustainable development and environmental management. Then I will talk something about the National Green Tribunal, and then to create an interface which I call Enviro Legal Synergy. ELS is the interface that I'm referring to. And there also, I would like to ask a question whether it is an illusion or it is already become reality or it is on the way to become reality. And to address these things, I fall back on some of the judgments delivered by the National Green Tribunal. And I have taken cases that I have heard and in whose judgments I have had a hand. It is only from the bench that I have constituted and not other benches. May I have the next slide, please? Yeah. Very often, the terms sustainable development and environmental management are used in an interchangeable manner, though it should not be done. They don't mean the same and they don't address the same issues. Just to put it in a couple of sentences, sustainable development centers around our needs today, tomorrow, day after, and after several years. We all know the definition, but at the same time, uh, often this part of the definition is not highlighted, namely to ensure that natural systems continue to give their services to us by providing natural resources. So this is in direct contrast with the environmental management, which I feel cannot be seen, cannot be addressed as slabs or buttons that you see in Millennium Development Goals. There, each slab, each button can be addressed by a group of people who are connected with that subject and develop that into an action plan and effect it. But environmental management, on the other hand, should be always seen in its entirety. So it talks about addressing the issue in part, but all the time in its entirety. That means, if air quality is addressed, at the same time, water quality also has to be addressed. And then, when all other components of the environment are addressed, we should address its impact on social, its impact on legal, its impact on other major fields or major branches of study. So that way, these two terms are not the same. But in the last 15, 20 years, there has been an attempt to employ the principles of sustainable development and then combine that with the approaches that we follow in environmental management. And this approach has made it possible, in fact, to create the interface that I'm visualizing. May I have the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah, the Valeri. Yeah. And we all know that the National Green Tribunal Now it is a very popular court in the country, and not only in India, even in other countries, it has become a very, very popular institution where environmental issues are agitated and adjudicated. And just to put it in a nutshell, around 2007 and 2008, the legal fraternity in the country, under their working banner, thought that environment related cases are pending in different courts in large numbers, and one way to address and clear this backlog and to give more importance to the way the adjudication is done, there is a need to tribunalize this aspect. So, as a result, a National Green Tribunal Act was passed in 2010, and it has a set of mandates regarding the process, regarding the procedure, regarding the codes, right? And then it has its own structure to discharge the mandated functions. I'm not going to the details because that is not the focus of our discussion. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next.
Takes time.
Yeah, next over. Hello, next.
Sixth slide, sir.
Yeah, next ಹೋಗಿ ನಾನು ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರಿ.
Yes, sir. ಮಾಡಿ.
Yeah. Now, as an organization, NGT has a chairperson and judicial members. They are all judges from, normally chairperson is from a retired Supreme Court judge, and judicial members are from high courts, different high courts in the country. And then it has expert members who are not from judicial background, but from other backgrounds. And then to manage the administration, you have a registrar general, and then registrars wherever you have NGT benches. And then the procedure is outlined in the Act. Next slide, please. 7, slide number 7, Haki. Yes. And now, I'll spend a couple of minutes on this slide. When we talk about the tribunal exclusively for environmental adjudication, it has got to be different, it has got to be unique, and it has to have a timeline. So these three were considered at the time of even drafting the Act. And one is, it should have all the functions that are possible to be done by science or scientific principles. And then whatever is already practiced in legal systems, all of them have to be included. And then, because of this apparent mixing, right, new and innovative thought process has to be put into this for enabling adjudication for better governance. And one way of doing these 3 or 4 things is to move from centralized legal delivery system, namely High Court and then lower courts, then Supreme Court, to decentralize, to create tribunals. And as far as this environmental court is concerned, the NGT, it had to be a product of evolution where, though it has all the components of a specialized justice system, it should add some value to the whole system, and that value is, within quotes, science. So for the first time, in the world, right, this experiment was carried out by the then government of India. Next slide, 8. Yeah. And what should be the purpose or goal of all this exercise that I detailed a couple of minutes ago? The main focus was to not to just deliver judgments. If there is a case, there will be argument, there will be a judgment, there will be an order passed. That was not the idea. The idea was to have informed environmental decision making, right? As against important judgments delivered. So, on one hand, you have important judgments delivered, and on the other side, you have informed environmental decision, right, made. How? By trimming the existing laws, by amending the existing acts, and reviewing the existing regulatory mechanism. Remove all unwanted things from this. Streamline the process. Specify and redesign the procedures. And if all these things allow you to evolve into a better version of policy, do it. So which one has to be done first? In the slide, I have put them right one below the other. But if the system has to be effective, it should be seen as a cycle. You have a policy, policy leads to some enactment of laws, and then when the law is put into action, it is followed by regulatory processes, following the procedures, and if you find something wrong somewhere, right, it has to be addressed. That means it's a cycle. You break the cycle, rectify the mistakes, make it cycle once again. And this can be done only when we have as not just a regulatory or a monitoring mechanism, but an adjudicating mechanism as well. So in order to make whatever is shown in the slide effective, right, adjudication has to be done. The moment you say adjudication, you need a judge to be there. And since this involves not just legal aspects, and it involves science. So from this moment onwards, till the completion of our discussion, the term science, please listen, the term science means science, pure science, technology, management, and related fields of knowledge. In order to give a holistic terminology, I use the term science, but this term draws freely from engineering sciences, technologies, management sciences, and others as and when appropriate and where they are required. So in order to do this and to view this as a straight line at times and as a cycle at other times, right, the whole exercise is carried out, and then you have in place a system, if not with all these attributes, with most of the attributes. Next slide, please. Slide 9. Yeah. And now, in creating this kind of an interface, right? So to create this interface, first we should see what is it that's the crux of the matter. There are a number of scientists, right, who want to take the legal route to see that environmental integrity is restored. Right? You can, for example, if you go to the times of MC Mehta, 1990s, 1980s, oleum leak case, Okra solid waste dump yard in Delhi case, Taj Mahal air pollution, Mathura refinery case, and so on. Maybe 3-4 decades ago, when lawyers used to go and file cases, the scientific support they needed, scientists were there, scientific facts were there, scientific findings were there, but then to incorporate this science in the adjudication process and take along the route of law, I mean, that was, I should say, if not lacking, that particular thing was not perfect. And similarly, when a judge hears, or when he used to hear such matters, right, related to environment, that's when I have put it very clearly in parenthesis, judges included, okay, and I've increased the font size because that's the crux of the matter, right? And when judicial officers try to adjudicate these environmental issues, they should also have clarity on how to not just read whatever is placed on the table of the court, but to evaluate that, understand that, and then appreciate the science behind it, appreciate the mathematics behind that, pages and pages of equations that come out to arrive at one decision making point, and so on. And at the same time, to give direction to other statutory and regulatory bodies like Pollution Control Board or municipality or whatever it is. And when a scientist did not know fully the root of law and judicial officers were not comfortable on scientific roads, right? What happened was, the suffering party was not the lawyers, certainly not, right? They were getting their fees, not the lawmakers, because they just make the law. And until the ball is bouncing back on them, they need not even see that. And certainly not scientists, because this was not their primary job. Their primary job was something else. But the silent sufferer was the environment, right? Be it quality of air, be it the havoc caused by antibiotics problem in Medak district, right? Or Mathura refinery, air pollution, and then its effect on Taj Mahal. I mean, these are all old cases. I'm referring to them because that's how the whole thing started. So in order to see that this kind of suffering by environment, that has to be alleviated, that has to be remedied, and then the interface that I have partly introduced to you, right, is supposed to address this issue. Next slide, please. Right. And this, now I am coming to the ELS. ELS is my interface. I've told you already. Right. And the primary premise on which I call this ELS as the interface is, it is something like what we call in ecological systems or ecological studies, ecotone. We use the term ecotone when two different ecological systems overlap. You get a formation of a lens like that, a body which has most of the characters of A, most of the characters of B, but it has its own character, namely C. The success of this lens, the success of the tone, I mean this ecotone, is not dependent upon what A has and B has, but what this lens has. So it is the unique feature of this interface that will only deliver the goods, or rather that only should deliver the goods, right? And so in this context, I won't accept the word science as science unless it gets transformed into scientific engagement. Okay. Now, let me tell, at least for the benefit of youngsters and some students, if they happen to be there in the audience, what do you mean by scientific engagement? I learn about water. I learn about algae. One I learn in chemistry, the other one I learn in botany class. When I see a water body which appears green, unless I am able to relate and engage that there is something which is making this water green, and because of that, the quality of water has changed from A to B. And if this is an environmental problem, I have to put this science before their lordships and make them understand and see that the color of my water body becomes like as it was originally or it should be. So this is the scientific engagement that I refer to. It is a chain of events, and in all the blocks of this chain you will have science not simmering, right? Science doing its part at different stages, right? And similarly, in the case of NGT, okay, when you have a bench where you have a judicial member and you have uh, an expert member, and then you call this as EL system or ELS? No. By bringing a professor of environmental science and asking him to sit with a retired high court judge, you will not create any enviro-legal synergy. It is not that. It is just like a judge and Nagendran watching cricket match in the stadium. Not beyond that. It is just that. So, ELS is not an assembly. It is a functional engagement that should take place when they are on the bench. So just as science becomes science when it is engagement, enviro-legal synergy takes place not by making these two people sit on the bench, but they should become a combination where the function, when the NGT functions, nobody should know who has written the judgment. If I write the judgment or if he writes the judgment, the way science is understood by both, the way law is understood by both, and the way these two are not mixed, these two are no, combined in such a way that it is a product addressing the environmental issue that is being agitated. So this means there should be a lot of learning taking place. So it is, I mean, you learn on the bench, you learn when you go back to your chambers, and you learn when you sit together in one of the chambers and start thinking about it, start writing your judgment. That's what I call a collaboration and bi-directional learning. I'll give some examples a little later. So the basic characteristic feature of ELS is it is a learning platform. It is not unidirectional learning, it is bi-directional learning. In this learning, learning will not take place unless there is collaboration, unless there is acceptance, right? And only then you can move on. Next slide, please. 11. Yeah. And I thought one way of uh, putting across as to how this learning has taken place, right? That is the from the process straight away I will go to the product, and then if the product has whatever has been learned on the bench or in the chambers, then you say that synergy has taken place. Because no, this synergy is not a physical synergy, it is a functional synergy, and therefore you need to see a product where the components of this synergy become explicit. And let me take a few examples now. And one of the, as I've written here, one of the best pieces of legislation that at least I have seen uh, since independence is the Solid Waste Management Rules 2016. I'm not telling this because I have been teaching, I have been working, and I have done a lot of work in solid waste management. But it is true that the SWM rules 2016 is a beautiful amalgamation of all legal aspects and, from science and technology viewpoint, implementation of the state of the art technology. For the first time, perhaps, in environmental law in the country, right? You can see in this act, I mean, in this set of rules, how each and everything has been specified to the last dot, as they say. And in order to comply with this, the person who is implementing these rules will have to know the state of art technology, and he should also know all the legal aspects, right? All the legal sword that is hanging on his head. So that means you have here a, not just a piece of paper, a law of the land where you can see the effect of bidirectional learning process. And this 2016 rules came up after a number of judgments were passed, number of orders were passed in NGT, different benches of NGT. And again, I was talking to you about the cycle and the policy. If you see the latest amendment to the Solid Waste Act and also the Swachh Bharat program, you will find a beautiful link. The Swachh Bharat is a program that is going to be introduced in the society. People will feel and get the benefit of that. And to drive that, you have law. You have science and technology based, science and technology driven law to drive this program. So this is one example or one product that tells how this bidirectional learning has taken place. And then the second one is business regulator accountability. Now you can see, if you go in major cities, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, and all, when you are driving, you will find in different parts the air quality now here is so many micrograms of this, right? That means, this accountability has been brought to the eyes of the public. And this is another example of how judicial intervention and judicial science mix, making this kind of a thing possible to be written in judgment and see that it is implemented by the regulators. So it is not enough if you say my factory is working fine, but real-time value of various parameters should be there on display. And these centers are called care air centers. Let me not go into the details of that. This is another example. And then I'm going to refer to the next one, this Aranmula Airport case, later on again. But at this point, see, in Kerala state, the definition of wetlands and definition of wetlands, as you see in central government documents, they are different. And environmental clearance was given to this particular project, Aranmula Airport, based on the definition of wetland as it is there in the state law. But the advocates who argued before us, they said this cannot be applied, because in a major project like international airport, what you should see is not some 70, 80-year-old definition. It has to be reviewed. And you have to compare that with the central definition. That's exactly what the tribunal did. And then, as also some elements of land use policy, some aspects of resource use, using of water, using of groundwater, right? And the conversion of agricultural land into non-agricultural land. All these things, were considered by the court, and then the environmental clearance given to this project was stay. It was cancelled. So the project has not come, and it will not come. So this is another example where the not just a loose mixture, but a collaborated effort of law and science, right, can protect the environment and ensure environmental management is there in live condition, not just on paper. Can I have the next slide, please? Next slide. Yeah. And similarly, I'll just run through this because a little more I'll talk later. Because of this science law interface and this mechanism, lot of streamlining has been done in assessment protocol. In a very interesting case again from Kerala, see, there was a question. If a particular, let me not go into the details, if parameter A exhibits this number, then that waste is called hazardous waste. And out of 18, only that particular thing is increase. I mean, that is showing increase in the analysis. The remaining 17 were not. So what do you do in this kind of a case? And there was a virtual fight between the lawyers in the tribunal. This is not the way it has to be done. They have not followed the right protocol to test this. And you just imagine only a judge without any scientific background were to be there. It would be very difficult to decide. But then if a person who knows the other component, the other side of the story also, then we ordered that it has to be redone in a different place, not in Kerala, outside the Kerala state. And then we used that particular case and then directed the government of India, the Ministry of Environment and Forest, to modify the protocols and streamline all that. This is a great success from the environmental management viewpoint. Similarly, the procedures, right? How the environmental committee members are to be selected, how they should be made accountable, and how they should maintain manifests, and then what are all the things that they should comply with before they give or refuse environmental clearance. This was made possible because of this interface, namely ELS and NGT. And then the other three also, like a major change in Motor Vehicles Act, right, was made possible because of a landmark judgment by this southern bench of NGT, right, as to how to carry fish. There was a big case, and then we directed that the lawyer's contention was this is not the state subject. Unless center modifies the MV Act, we cannot do anything. We directed the central government to address this issue, and subsequently this amendment was made. Right. Next slide, please. Next slide. And I've given you some 7 or 8 examples. But now let me come to the other side of the ELS. It is not very easy. To create an interface is a comparatively easier job. That's what the government of India did. But then, when two people from different fields of knowledge and expertise and experience sit together, lot of new issues come up. And these are all to be handled. See, many of these issues are to be handled inside the courtroom. Nobody should know that there is some difference of opinion between the members. The court should not know that. And I should not know that. My colleague should not know that, right, from expressions. But we have to handle the issues in the court on the bench. And then there are certain things which you have to handle when you are in your chambers to discuss. And I thought I will talk about a couple of them, a couple of issues. One is the terminology conflict. Okay. And the terminology that a scientist is used to and the terminology which a judge is used to, it can create a lot of problems. And it takes a lot of effort on both sides, right, to understand the terminology and then give interpretation to that. Right? For example, the threshold conflict. If you go strictly by law, you should not, I mean, the minimum pass in the examination, not during pandemic times, right? Before pandemic and maybe after pandemic, if there is going to be one like that, 40 out of 100 is pass, 39 is fail, 39.9 still the boy fails. 40 means 40. That's how law looks at it. But when, as a teacher, when I arrange the ability of students and say he is between 90 and 95, 85 and 90, 75 and 78, I mean, when I put students in different brackets, to me, a fellow who scored 99 and 99.1, okay, there is difference in terms of number, but functionally this may not be right. And when we say regulatory, for example, BOD, 30 milligrams per liter, right? If it is 31, it is against law. And we say 500 meters from high tide line. According to me, high tide line is here. According to somebody else, high tide line is 10 meters, either this side or that side of the line that I'm talking about. Then which is right? So when we talk about this kind of thresholds, the practical threshold, regulatory threshold, ecological threshold, legal threshold, all these things are issues that are to be handled, and then you have to give a judgment. This is a very difficult job. After having undergone that, right, I'm telling you, it's very difficult. And then the standards of proof, right, in case of certainty and uncertainty. Sometimes, say for example, in a criminal law, in a criminal case, the certainty is somebody killed somebody. The fellow who is killed, he is no longer alive. So it is certain that he is not alive. Right? And that kind of certainty cannot be put in actual systems driven by natural science processes, management processes, and so on. And here again, right, this conflict. Nobody can say, certainly I cannot say, yeah, it will rain today. I'm not certain about that. I can't say it won't rain today. It may rain. So this certainty, statistics, probability, forecast, right, prediction, I mean, all these things, and against, set of rules or set of laws, right, this handling this is a big issue. It's a big challenge. I won't call it issue. It is a challenge. And then again, rigidity in acceptance. Okay, this we have faced while giving compensation. See, in Tamil Nadu, because of tanneries, X million acres of land have been affected. All the farmers, they have to be compensated, because compensation is one of the mandates of the tribunal. Is tannery affected that nature in Kanpur and in Vellore are the same? In both the places it is tannery. The process is the same. The products are more or less the same, right? The raw materials are same. The quantum may also be same in a very strict square, but the compensation that you decide, well, is a big challenge, right, that we face. And there are so many scientific models and scientific principles that have been evolved to calculate this. And in order to come to some conclusion and agreement with the judicial member on the formula, he will tell formula of Jackson is better. I don't accept formula of Nagendra, right? And formula of X is to be thrown out. It is not applicable to Indian conditions, right? So this kind of issues that keep ELS together, okay, and then ego, right? However much we say that I am not egoistic, there should be no, this is all theory. All of us have, and unless that E is thrown down, right, you can't go forward. These are some of the major issues that are there to keep this synergy or the interface alive and functioning. Next slide, please. And with these issues, with these positives that I have given you now, I've shown you both sides of the coin. But then we have to move forward. Adjudication should go on because the environment where we live, it's undergoing change, and it will continue to change, both on the negative and positive side. And then there should be a way forward. What is it that we can do? And then the 4 points that I have put, these are from my thinking. They may not, I mean, you may not accept, you may not agree with all this. This is what I feel has to be done. And then I have discussed about all this in the right forum. One is data embedded monitoring law. The law that is there, it should say that this law will be applied with the data getting embedded in that, like the solid waste 2016 rule as an example. Okay, it is not applicable just like that. No, while applying the law, especially for environmental monitoring, it should be supported by data. That means, so you are making people more accountable, so accountability increases, right? And then a scientific perspective analysis, SPA. Many of the standards that are there in our standard books in the pollution control departments, they are older than me. I'm 69. So unless we revise, unless we update, and unless we allow emission to take place and then control that, both in-house and then once it comes out, right? This has to be supported by analysis. So it should not be left to one single agency to do this. And then the next one, the concept of ecological or environmental range in place of a single number. Let us not say 250 milligrams per liter COD. We will fail. We'll fail utterly. We should leave it to the decision maker and the industry. Law embedded analysis, data embedded law, all these should be made to work in the same place. So no pollution control board officer can take everything in his hand. There is law, law has data, there is data, data has law. And then when you do this, you will say, well, in this situation, it may vary from 250 to 260. So if 260, he is not penalized, right? And so this introducing range in place of absolute numbers, I think, it should be discussed nationwide. We have not yet done it. And then the development of numerical equivalent. I have had great time with my judge colleagues, several of them. I have worked with a dozen of them, okay, and more perhaps. They see the judicial system is very, very, attached to this usage beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, the concept of beyond reasonable doubt is totally different in legal parlance compared to science parlance. So we should have another definition or another perfect understanding of this numerical equivalent and beyond reasonable doubt, which is exclusive for ELS. ELS should have its own understanding of what is beyond reasonable doubt, either to uphold the environmental clearance or slash it or put fine or close the industry or give him tax holiday, whatever be the action, it should be having this working definition of beyond reasonable doubt. This is something which we have to do at national level. Yeah, next slide, please. I have just, I think, a couple of more. That's all. And now, let me just tell you some 2 or 3 cases and how this interface has looked into it. The product I showed you already. How we arrived at that. How that product was made in the kitchen. I'll tell you. In this Aranmula airport, this where EC was set aside, it was set aside because the finding of the tribunal, right, was that the ecological, social, and economic development as proposed and suggested by the project proposal does not hold water at all. That's one of the reasons why EC was stuck down. And then from the environmental viewpoint, Dr. Trivedi was talking earlier about so many protective measures of mangroves. And wetlands are another very, very important natural resource we have. And if this project were to come, vast areas of wetlands, right, and agricultural lands would have been converted into something else. And in that particular context, right, the court felt that it should not be done. And then the data. I've been harping on data. The environmental clearance for this project was given based on the data which was collected even before the project was thought about by the promoters. And this, and then so many other reasons, the environmental clearance was set aside. They took it to Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, we see no reason why we should interfere in this judgment. Right? It is one of the landmark judgments to protect environment given by NGT thanks to ELS. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Then the coastal regulation zone. A small deviation in the coastal management of Pondicherry came before us. And the arguments for and against, okay, we heard them for 3-4 days. And then the court, in its scientific wisdom, decided that we should stop calling Andhra coast, Karnataka coast, Tamil Nadu coast, Pondicherry coast, Gujarat coast, Maharashtra coast. No, these various sections, okay, that which is there in Andhra Pradesh, it is called Andhra coast. But coast by itself, it does not know that I am different from that. The whole thing is a single continuum. So the court ordered that the entire coastline of the country should be seen and it should be realized as a single coastal zone ecosystem, and then all the states were brought on the same table. So all the secretaries of all the states, they were made to come to Chennai bench, right? And then a kind of class was taken for them, and then in its order, tribunal said that you have to remap the entire coastal stretch, and that has taken place. And 1991 maps were withdrawn, and later some revisions have taken place, and now 2019 mapping is in progress. And the institute, which is located in Anna University campus in Chennai, they are doing this. That is a National Institute for Coastal Zone Management, right? And so in this judgment, the court made it mandatory that educational and research institutions in those respective coasts should be involved in this exercise. So this is an excellent example of where who teaches, what is taught, and who is doing, and what is being done by the government should work in unison, work together. That's very, very important aspect of this judgment. And the next slide, please. I think I have one more or two more. Yeah, next. Yeah, and then again, these power plants in different states, right? And lot of administrative and procedural changes while granting environmental clearance were addressed in the judgments related to these to make the whole process more transparent, right? And also for the first time perhaps the conflict of interest, okay, was introduced in formulating the various committees for giving environmental clearance. Next slide, please. And the pharmaceutical industry, right? This is an excellent example of a case filed in 1996, okay, when I was not knowing perhaps 80% of environmental science and law and management that I know today. A case was filed in Andhra Pradesh High Court by MC Mehta, and the mother case of this was filed in somewhere in 1984 or 85 when I started teaching environmental science in St. Joseph's College. And later, after nearly 30 years, I had to adjudicate the case. Right, Mr. Mehta, at the age of 88 or so, he was on his feet for 2 hours in the tribunal, arguing the same thing. Because this case was converted into a football from this court to that court to this court, and so on. And then Supreme Court said, let it go to NGT. Their orders will be final. We will not hear any appeal on that. Right? And then for the first time, I think, in this area, the Medak area, compensation was ordered. And the last information I have is that about 60% of compensation has already been dispersed to, right, the farmers there. Next slide, please. And so here, technically, I end my presentation in the sense that the so-called science law interface, at least to my mind, is a workable option. It has worked, it's working, and it will continue to work when whatever required refreshing and updating is done by the concerned parties. So this science law interface is certainly futuristic in nature. It is definitely a pointer, the pointer in the form of judgments and after judgments, what has happened. And then if we have to manage our environment inevitably through legal course, if we are forced to knock the doors of a court, an interface like NGT, right, would deliver in time, deliver with specific directions, deliver with monitoring mechanism in place, and deliver with accountability. On all these aspects, this interface, to my mind, is, if not panacea, a highly workable option. That's the reason why several pairs of eyes in the world are looking at our NGT, and they are trying to create similar organizations in their respective countries. And now, for the second time in my professional career, I have come to Karnataka. Once virtually, that is today, and then in person the last time. And I think this is the right time to acknowledge the government of Karnataka for making this possible, and more so Bangalore University, especially my ecology teachers, Dr. Khatri Shakuntala, who later on became my PhD guide as well, and Dr. S. Ravichandra Reddy. They taught me the alphabets of ecology. I still remember the day I went to a bookshop in Avenue Road to buy Odum's ecology book. And so I thank my teachers who taught me ABC. So that way, Bangalore University is Nanna Parisarada Jnana Ganga. Then first, Allene Gnana nang first sikkiddu alli. And with this, I could contribute a little in the UGC sponsored development of new courses in St. Joseph's College, where for the first time in India, a dedicated environmental science department was created, right? And I thank God for giving that opportunity to me. So I thank that college. That was an excellent springboard. Then I arrived in Anna University. En route, I was in Goa. Goa Engineering College taught me some more words and sentences on environment. And then it is Anna University where I could really, if I can use the term, blossom. That gave me the opportunity to increase my knowledge. ನನ್ನ ಜ್ಞಾನವನ್ನು ಬೆಳೆಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು opportunities I got in Anna University. Learn, and an excellent learning curve, a great trajectory there. And if all these institutions, if they had not done what they have done to me, I wouldn't have been talking to you about this synergy today, and I would not have been talking to you about ELS unless I had the opportunity, right, in National Green Tribunal. So all the theory and all the practical things that I was talking about throughout my teaching profession, 30 plus years, right, ended up sitting on the bench in National Green Tribunal and talk to you people today about an interface which was created. And that I am the first member of the tribunal to do this. I think that's the greatest blessing by God. So I thank you all, and I acknowledge all these organizations. Right? Next slide, please. And thank you all. In spite of all the technical snags and problems that we had, you have found time to listen to me. Sometimes not seeing now is a good surprise. People who have seen me find you have seen me. Those who have not seen me, you have heard, right? And I think that has more value than seeing. So thank you. And I have given in the last slide my contact. So if you want to criticize, if you want to give constructive criticism, if you want to discuss, if you want to educate me, you can do so on my email ID, or you can call me and bang me. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rajesh, for an exceedingly enlightening talk. We all talked about science of environment all the time, but first time we are hearing the legal dimensions of environmental management, and your journey of over 4 decades in these areas were all kind of synthesized in this talk of about 15 minutes. The Karnataka Science Technology Academy is so very grateful to you for being with us for an illuminating talk. Thank you very much. Of course, people have seen you in the flyer. Your photograph has been in the flyer for past few weeks on several platforms, though they were not able to see you today speaking. So they have known you by your face, and today they have heard you. Thank you very much. At this time, we have some time for discussions, comments, questions for both the talks by Professor Trivedi and Professor Nagendran. Any of our audience would like to say something? Now is the time, please.
So there is a question from S.V. Krishnamurthy sir to panelists, especially to Dr. Raman Trivedi sir. Is there any direct negative effect on increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide on the mangrove productivity?
Pardon, what is that question?
Sir,
One
Direct-
minute, let me. Are you able to listen me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can
Okay,
hear
okay.
you, sir.
Ah,
Is there any
tell me.
direct negative effect of increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide on the mangroves productivity?
Yeah, this carbon dioxide, we all know that it is a great this mangrove forest, and sequestration is done, and the data indicates that its sequestration rate is much higher than any terrestrial forest. And the data also I have given there, that how the speed of sequestration is much faster there, and total carbon dioxide taken also is much faster. But due to cutting and other things, the same carbon which is trapped inside the mangroves, inside the sediments, are being released, and so it again causes the greenhouse effect and then global warming. But there had been some studies where it has been proved that the carbon dioxide present atmosphere being trapped by mangrove forest, and that carbon sequestration is done. And of course, as I told you, it will not have adverse impact. Till now, it has not been found, though it is taking carbon dioxide. But I have not found anywhere that any adverse impact on that, on the mangrove forest. But it has worked in mitigating the climate impact by taking the carbon dioxide from atmosphere and sequestration of carbon. That is the study, and we have seen the data indicates that it is 5 times more than the terrestrial forest.
Thank you very much, sir. There is one more question to you only, sir. Can you please give us more information on effect of sea surface temperature rise and reproductive failure of important biota in Sundarbans?
Pardon?
Can you please
Hello?
provide more information on effect of sea surface temperature rise and productivity failure of important biota in Sundarban?
Yeah, today that was not the topic, because that reflects this biodiversity status. Already there had been work that, of course, surface temperature rise in Sundarban had not been that alarming. Sea level rise is there, salinity change we have observed, but there has not been, it has not crossed the threshold level sea surface temperature rise there in Sundarban. So the effects, whatever are there in Sundarban, adverse effects, it is mainly due to salinity change, and you can say that the sea level rise. These are the two aspects of climate change that have affected the mangrove forest, but not the sea surface temperature. It has not still crossed the threshold level in Sundarban. But there has been a shift in biodiversity. There has been loss of biodiversity. Migratory routes are disturbed. Ecological balance is being disturbed. Today I wanted to show, maybe some other time, some of the videos which we took during our study in Sundarban, and with photographs, where mangroves have been cut and aquaculture farms have been developed, and just there we saw this breeding grounds of different organisms there, and live videos we had done there. So those videos I could have shown, and how just by the side there are aquaculture farms, and because of that their breeding grounds are being affected. So that is different threats and other aspect, biodiversity loss and all this different topic. But due to some other regions there has been loss, not due to sea surface temperature.
Thank you, sir. What are the other parameters which play most crucial role in determining the entire process of aquatic productivity?
Aquatic productivity, there are many factors, physical, chemical, biological factors are there, which affects the aquatic productivity, and that is itself is a big topic, productivity being affected by different factors. So apart from whatever we have listed temperature, salinity. Specifically, we talk today about Sundarban, where salinity and sea surface rise, storm surge, these are affecting, how these are affecting, and of course, human intervention affecting this Sundarban biosphere. But there are many factors which influence productivity. It's all complex, physical, chemical, and biological factors. That these need to be discussed separate someday, but it is a big topic discussing about fact. But there are different physical factors. Already some factors I told about sea surface rise and salinity. But there can be water current movement, then pattern of rise in sea level. Then you can say that movements there, migratory routes being, then sand mining. There are many factors. Specific, I am talking about Sundarban. But overall, if you say, so many factors are there.
Thank you very much, Professor Trivedi. So thanks to both Professor Trivedi and Professor Nagendran for these distinguished talks. And
Sir, I must congratulate Dr. Nagendran for so nice talk, and I could learn many things today from this talk. Thank you, sir.
Very good, very nice. And coming Wednesday in the Bharat Swatantra Amrita Mahotsava series, we have a very distinguished talk by Professor V. Prakash, former Director CFTR in Mysore, at the same time 11 o'clock. Now, having said this, over to Dr. M. Ramesh, CEO of KSTA, for his words at this time. Dr. Ramesh, please.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Good afternoon. Wishing you all a happy World Environment Day. Today we have organized 2 talks in this webinar by eminent scientists on the theme ecosystem restoration. First talk was delivered by Dr. Raman Kumar Trivedi on ecological restoration of mangroves, a potential implication for climate mitigation. On behalf of KSTA and all of you, I thank Dr. Trivedi immensely for a very informative and insightful talk. Thank you very much, Dr. Raman. Second talk was delivered by eminent scientist Professor R. Nagendran, former member, National Green Tribunal on the Science Law Interface, a futuristic pointer for environmental management. On behalf of KSTA and the participants, I thank Professor Nagendran immensely for a very scholarly and enlightening talk. Thank you very much, sir. I am grateful to our Honorable Chairman, Professor S. Ayyappan, for his guidance in organizing this webinar. I am also thankful to our esteemed KSTA members who have joined this webinar, Professor B.G. Mulimani, sir, Dr. A.E. Eknath, Professor Katre Shakuntala Madam, and Dr. Nagesh Hegde. I also thank senior academicians and scientists who have joined this webinar, Dr. K.V. Rao, Dr. Ramakrishna, Dr. Girija Shivkumar, Dr. Ishwar Bhatt, Dr. Sumaya, Dr. Satish Chandra, Dr. Suresh, Dr. Priya, Dr. Manohar Dadmi, Dr. Kakatkar, and all the senior faculty who have joined this webinar. Thank you very much. And I thank our associates in organizing this program, Pilikula Regional Science Center and Surana College. I'm thankful to Dr. K.V. Rao and Dr. Bhavani Madam for joining us in organizing this program. I'm thankful to all the participants for joining this webinar. One announcement, as our Honorable Chairman told, next Wednesday, that's on 9th, we have a distinguished talk by Padma Shri Dr. V. Prakash, former Director CFTRI. He'll be delivering a talk on role of food, nutrition and lifestyle in enhancing immunity. In addition to that, we have 3 more distinguished talks lined up next week by experts from NIMHANS. The first talk will be by Dr. Padma Murthy, Professor and Head, Department of Psychiatry, NIMHANS. This will be on June 7th, Monday at 11. She will be talking on taking charge of your health, reducing lifestyle risk factors. And on June 8th, that's on Tuesday, we have 2 more talks by Nimmance experts, Dr. Gayatri N, former professor, Department of Neuropathology. She will be talking on neuromuscular disaster, an overview at 11 o'clock on June 8th. And in the afternoon of June 8th, we have one more talk by Dr. Chittaranjan Andrade, Senior Professor, Department of Clinical Psychopharmacology and Neurotoxicology. He'll be talking on electroconvulsive therapy, myths and facts. It will be at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It's very difficult to get Nimmance experts for talks. They have readily agreed for these talks. I request all the participants to join us for these webinars and also encourage your students to participate. With this, I thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nagendran sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nagendra, sir.
Thank
Thank you, Dr. Raman.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
Ayyappan. Thank you.
Thank you.
और जाए तभी
मेरे से इंट्रोडक्शन